Chad, good to see you again. It's like we almost just talked yesterday, you
I
know?
was going to say, Khalid, long time no see, man. This is awesome.
So yeah, it's kind of cool to see that there's a lot of beginners in the chat. Full disclosure, I would say Chad and I are also beginners in Maui. I think a lot of people are. It's interesting to see the folks coming from maybe potentially different front end or desktop or mobile kind of environments like Xamarin, WPF. I see mentioned in there. I wonder if there's any people who have done Silverlight in the past, maybe. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to bring that up, but there's probably folks who have Silverlight experience in the audience today. So, yeah, Chad, it's been kind of fun working through this project and learning about Maui. Maybe you can put some thoughts to kind of our Maui experience so far. What are things we liked? What are things maybe could be a little better? Those kind of things. So go ahead, Chad.
Goodness. Well, Khalid, thank you so much um, for the intro, for talking. I appreciate that. That's been fantastic. And I've really enjoyed working with you on this sample, getting it going. It's been a lot of fun. We've learned a lot. Um, Good stuff and bad stuff. Since we have a lot of people new to Maui, I just put a blog post in the website. You can come look at this. This is just our thoughts. Xamarin versus Maui, things that we think are different, things that we think are better. Well, we're not saying, well, yeah, some things are better. I mean, the way you draw on the screen is a whole lot better in Maui.
Mm-hmm.
Less code, it's a little bit smoother. Concerns are separated better. It's a whole lot difference. But there are, there's 15 main differences, and I don't know if we want to get into details here. I put the link. Everybody can come back and read this at their leisure, if you will, I guess.
Yep.
But that's a good thing. So today we're going to talk a little bit about this app. This is a simple little cookbook app that we put together. This is how it looks. And I am an expert designer, so you will see brilliance in how this app looks.
Hey,
Yes.
hey, you know what, Chad, though? I opened it up this morning and it does look a lot better than it did when we first started. So it's definitely like a work in progress in terms of the UI, but that's what the audience is for. That's why they're paid the big bucks. They come in,
Yes.
they design these slick applications. Syncfusion's really there to help them with these world-class controls so they can get their Maui development sped up and kind of get these apps transitioned potentially from Xamarin over to kind of Maui. So I would like to know, we've talked about this a lot, Chad, but there is a deadline coming up for end of life for Xamarin developers, which is around May 2024, as it stands right now. So if you have pre-existing Xamarin applications that are targeting iOS, Android, I think Windows. I don't know if Xamarin Forms targets Windows, but I know Maui does. Yeah, now's the time to really start investigating Syncfusion controls, the ecosystem, and the things that you can do. So keep that in mind. May 2024 is kind of, the end of support for the Xamarin brand. So, yeah, it's important.
And then and just to piggyback on top of that, once support ends, you're only going to have a couple years left that the devices are going to support it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have next year, then you may have 2 or 3 years after that before your general devices on the market start just failing on the Xamarin app.
Yeah, I
And
mean
that's
Maui right now supports Xcode 14.2 and iOS 16 and the newest versions of Android. I think the next version is called Vanilla Cupcake, but you folks can correct me if you know the actual name of the next Android iteration. So, on that note, Chad, do you want to start looking at the app that we built? You can kind of walk
actually
through it and talk about some
actually
things.
sure. I have a question real quick. Somebody asked Xamarin Native. Tell me,
Mm-hmm.
is Xamarin Native just when you build the straight up iOS app in or Android app in Android Java or Objective C?
Yeah, it's basically when you start using the native controls of whatever environment you're targeting. So I would also say that it seems like Xamarin Native is going to be part of that end date as well. So even if you're using Xamarin or like Xamarin to target the native controls of those particular devices, I think that timeline also relates to Xamarin Native. So, but go to Microsoft's website. You can look at the documentation there and kind of confirm for yourself. But it does seem like Xamarin Native would also be included that because it does need to target the specific SDKs and APIs that are for that iteration of iOS or Android. So yeah, that would be my guess. It's probably a good guess, but it's my guess.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so here is the app that we wrote. This is the main page for it. If you this is the Syncfusion list view control. It is, as pretty as I'm able to make it. You have a selected item defined here. And if you select an item, then you can open that item. Now, this particular the simulators don't simulate the camera very well, or at all, actually. So this is just a recipe that I put in there. This is actually my son's favorite chocolate cake. Made this for his birthday last week, and there's one piece left.
Happy birthday, by the way. Yeah.
But yeah, so the whole idea for this little bitty app is you'll have some list of recipes. You click on open, you get the big picture. You can zoom in. You can add with a camera if you had a camera here. I do on my phone, but my phone is not able to display in this meeting for some reason today. So I'm being silly here because I have one picture to find.
So yeah, like the thing I guess I notice when we're looking at this app, Chad, I'm noticing the Syncfusion Listview, which we can go look at an implementation of then later. Does the list view collapse, by the way? I see there's groupings of, categories for dessert, lunch. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So that's something you probably is really easy to implement with the Syncfusion control. There's another thing we ended up doing in this sample as well. We're using the community toolkit and we're using an MVVM approach. For folks who don't know what MVVM is, it's model view view model. So we're doing a lot of binding to a view model's commands and observable properties, which I think is really cool. It's really been one of the most fun things about MAUI development, kind of seeing that separation of concerns from the view, the XAML views, and these models as well. So,
yeah.
But yeah, Chad, like maybe we should start talking about the code itself.
Sure.
You have Rider open here. Let's start talking about certain aspects of it.
Sure. So I do have Rider open. I am doing this on a Mac, and that means that certain places in the world have frozen over. And but the Mac has been good so far. I thought since we're doing MAUI and I want to show this on an Apple device, I should just be on an Apple device. And here I am. I picked Rider because we picked Rider a while back, and I like it. It does a lot of cool things that Visual Studio just doesn't do. A lot of little nice, helpful stuff that Visual Studio doesn't. So I've become a Rider developer the past 6 months, or as much of a developer as I am. I've been using Rider past little bit. I like it a lot.
Oh, Ivan is saying, can we make the full screen so we can read better? Yeah, I guess you could.
Actually,
There is a Zoom.
let me do this. Well, no, I don't want to do that. I was going to not share. I was going to just share the app, let it zoom in a little bit, but is my screen still shared?
Yeah, I can still see
Okay.
Rider. You can, I think you can hold Command, or actually just hit Shift, and you can. Oh, there you go. Your font's zooming now, so folks can see it better. Is that text more readable for you folks? Just give me a thumbs up. Yes. All right. Thank you, folks. So yeah, Yeah, I mean, I'm finding, self-admittedly, I am a web guy. I like ASP.NET Core, I like HTML, I like CSS. So the world of XAML feels HTML-like, but I know it's not, right? For folks who do Xamarin and do XAML development specifically, um, you know, I know a lot of people prefer the layout models in kind of mobile development. So it's definitely a learning curve, right, Chad? Like for us, you're a WinForms guy, I'm a web guy, so it's been a learning curve
Yes.
for sure.
It has been a very interesting learning curve, and the MVVM thing has been yeah, now that I've gotten a hang of it, it's actually kind of cool, but it
Hmm.
took a minute to get the hang of it. It
Yep.
really did. For
Hmm.
example, here here's the main page where we do all the stuff. And WPF developers, this looks very comfortable to you, but it's not the exact same as your WPF XAML. Just be prepared. It's going to be some quirky things that you're going to have to pay attention to.
Hmm.
And speaking about the list view, this is the command to tell it to expand and collapse.
Yep. It is kind of cool, like when I think about Syncfusion controls, like having these fields and properties that have a lot of this logic. Folks coming from Xamarin are probably used to building their controls. I know that individual in the chat mentioned Xamarin Native, so they're probably used to building their own set of controls as well, and using the native iOS or Android controls. It's just nice to kind of have a lot of those, interactions coded for you in the components. Um, but I think we should really start at the top of what like a Maui app is like, because folks coming from Xamarin are probably used to seeing a lot more projects in the Solution Explorer, right? There's typically one targeting each device or each platform, whether it's iOS, Android, UWP, that kind of stuff. The Maui team has decided that that's kind of overcomplicated. So if you're coming from Xamarin, you'll notice some of the newer things is that there's really only one project now. And you'll have this platforms folder, which Chad is opening up right now. And every target platform will have its own folder here. So you can still kind of optimize and create different things for different platforms, but it's all in one big project now, which I think I appreciate. I didn't really like going to each project. I found that a little annoying. So, um, but yeah, you did one of these things that I didn't know about because, again, I'm not a mobile developer full time, but you were able to give this app permissions to the camera, which I thought was really cool.
And this is just a Maui thing to give it permissions. Maui it has the stuff behind it to actually reach out to Android and tell it. Now, on my phone, it does stub up. It does still does pop up and say allow permissions, but
Hmm.
at least it's there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Maui does actually wrap a lot of system level functionality for devices, so you can ask for things like geolocation, coordinates. So if you're building a GPS powered application, you can have access to that. I did see recently there's a media control. So if you're building a media focused application, you can play things like videos and music, all on through Maui APIs and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how the project is set up. So you have those platforms. Chad, if you could copy or drag the project over into the editor, let's look at the CS proj, because I think this is important for folks to know as well. You can see at the top of the CS proj, we have a target frameworks attribute. So for every platform that you actually want to target, you'll end up adding these target frameworks here. So we have Android, iOS, and Mac Catalyst in this case. But we also have a conditional target frameworks below for when you and your team members are working on Mac or Windows, and you have your Windows devs targeting, the Windows platform as well. So you can build your solutions in different environments. and they're using kind of this build property to kind of turn on and off target frameworks, which I think is pretty cool. So below, you can see the supported OS platform versions. So if you're building an Android or iOS app, you can say my app requires this bare minimum operating system version, and that will actually make sure that when you deploy this app, it has everything it needs to actually run appropriately. So, which I think is pretty cool. The last thing in the CS Proj, which I think a lot of people are going to love coming from Xamarin, a lot of the resources like images and SVGs and stuff like that, they're really easy to add to the project via these MAUI tags. So here we're doing images, the splash screen, custom fonts. So when we build our application, MS Build is going to look at this item group, go through and kind of process those images so that they get built into your final deploy artifact. And then below, if you're a NuGet user and you like open source stuff in .NET, that's where all the package references go. So if you've been doing .NET for the last 5 years, this is going to look really comfortable for you. And it works with all the tooling that you're used to. So NuGet Package Manager, command line build tooling. This works in CI/CD, and it's relatively straightforward. There's not a lot of wackiness happening in here. So yeah, that's an overview of the project. So yeah, Chad, I'm going to throw it back to you. What thoughts do you have here?
So no, this is a great place. It just is an easy way to see the project and what's going on with it, and that was very nice. Couple things about the MAUI development you're going to want to pay. You want to think about is this guy here, and doing stuff like this. This sets objects for. This is kind of your global setup for the project, where you build stuff here. I mean, typically MAUI projects are not huge, but you set up stuff here that's going to just kind of be used throughout. In this case, I have everything set up as a singleton, so there won't be any changes to it as time goes by, just to avoid any issues like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something you'll want to look at and see. There's a ton of examples on how exactly to do all this.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like coming from ASP.NET Core, you're probably used to using ASP.NET Core's dependency injection, and it's nice to see MAUI kind of taking the same builder approach that you commonly see in ASP.NET Core apps. So you can do things like register singletons or scoped entities. Since we're using Community Toolkit's MVVM, and Chad will show this code later, it's nice to be able to have our dependencies injected into things like our XAML content or our MAUI content pages. And if you wanted to abstract things like navigation or the display alert functionality in MAUI, you can wrap those in interfaces and pass them in to your models. And that really helps you improve your unit testing capabilities when working with your MAUI applications. But Chad, I have an interesting question for you. So on line 31, you're adding Syncfusion core. Can you talk about the process of potentially adding Syncfusion controls to your MAUI application?
Sure. So you add our Syncfusion controls are added just via NuGet. It's a NuGet package. You just go get them, you put them in, and you're done. This is what they are actually here in just a minute. Actually, I only have one, I think. I only have the Listview.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does, this Syncfusion core, it simply just lays out the groundwork for Syncfusion to fit into the MVVM paradigm. It puts all the helper stuff there it just sets the ground so Syncfusion controls will work. You don't have to do a lot of thinking about wiring things together. This will do it all for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole point behind this core. And once you do it once, the core will pick up whatever controls you add later. You don't have to redo anything. It'll just pick it up and keep going with them.
That's pretty cool. I know if people are like selectively choosing the controls that they just need, they don't get everything. It doesn't bloat their apps when they go to kind of push them into the app stores. Being mindful of kind of how big your application ends up being is really cool. And I'm really happy Syncfusion is taking the care to kind of break these things out so people can pick their controls piecemeal. It's very cool.
Yeah. So tell me, I have a question for you guys. What does JetBrains Writer going to support with Maui? Is it current? What's the status going forward? What are the ideas for that?
Yeah, so we're keeping up with kind of the .NET releases. So .NET 7, so Maui released in .NET 6. .NET 7 is kind of really where it's starting to kind of stabilize. We're hoping in .NET 8, there's still some issues with Maui bugs that are being worked out, but we're definitely seeing Maui improve, and we're having discussions about some of the improvements we can do to the experience that people are having. Right now, if you're doing a lot of Xamarin development with Rider, you're going to have a pretty similar experience. I will say the one thing that's still lacking that I'd like to see our team tackle, but there's really no promise as to when we'll deliver it, is hot reload. I think hot reload is an important factor of changing the UI incrementally and seeing those changes happen. So that's something we're discussing, but we're still not sure when that's going to be delivered. But overall, you can do a lot of your development with Maui in Rider. Chad and I also talked about another package called Maui Reactor, which gives you this MVU style development for Maui. So if you're not a XAML fan and maybe you've looked into Flutter, MVU style can also be done in Maui, and that does kind of have like a hot reload command line utility. So there's a lot of options there, but we're doing our best to kind of look at Maui, keep track of it, and make sure developers are having a good experience in Rider as we move forward. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question, Chad.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Thank you. And just to talk a little bit about the MVVM here in this application, what we did with it, we look at a page, and then on the actual code behind the page is nothing. Everything's going to happen in the model, and it's going to be happen with these commands. So, if we go into the model for this, then the model is where all the work happens. We're creating some SQLite connections. Now this comes in from the MVVM. I don't have to do anything with this. I just say I want to put iQueryable attribute to it. And when the model loads up, it automatically parses through all this and does it for me, which is a fantastic thing to do. I like it a lot. But then all the work for the actual, all the work from the UI is done here in the model. So if we want to save this, then it goes through and it saves. It does code to save it. If we want to take a photo, here's where we actually take a photo. We're actually going to reach out and grab the camera, and then the camera is going to take a picture. Then we're going to capture the picture coming back from it. And again, this is all done in the model view, not in the code behind the page.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about the community toolkit is I think in .NET 6 source generators, if folks are familiar with source generators, it basically looks at your code and you can write code to generate code. That's why it's called source generators. The community toolkit is looking for certain attributes on our model. So in Chad's example here that he's showing in the code, we're seeing attributes for things like observable property. We're seeing attributes for things like relay command. And what the community toolkit is doing is looking at in this case for observable properties, it's looking at our private fields and it's generating iNotify change properties for us. So yeah, here's a perfect example. If Chad hovers over the name property, he never declared a name property. The community toolkit source generators are looking at our private fields that are decorated with those attributes and generating those properties. And the nice thing about those properties is they have the iNotify property changed interface on them. So you can do your two-way model binding, and when data changes on the view model, your views will update as well. The nice thing about source generators is it just removes all that additional noise that maybe you're used to with, writing Xamarin Forms apps or WPF applications. So yeah, definitely, I'm really, really impressed with the Community Toolkit MVVM source generators. So,
Cool. And just to step back up a little bit. So I've used Writer on my PC, and I'm now using it on my Mac. Does it only run on those two, or does it run elsewhere?
yeah, I mean, the nice thing about Rider is it's supports all three major operating system platforms. So Windows, Mac OS. Maui doesn't currently support Linux, but if you want to work on Linux, Rider works great there. Actually, a lot of our development team actually uses Linux, and they develop and dog food Rider on the Linux platform, which is really cool. So
Nice. So it's called Dog Food Writer, or is that
But
what you call it?
we do great for a company that sells dog food. No, I'm just joking. No, yeah, dog fooding means using your own products. So,
Okay. Very cool. Um,
yeah, I'm curious to ask the chat right now, when you folks are building your Xamarin applications, your WPF applications, are you using the event-driven model where, you're assigning events to on-clicked, on-tapped, those kind of things? Or are you using MVVM style frameworks like potentially Prism or, Community Toolkit? What are folks out there using to build their applications? So I'll wait for chat, but Chad, you can continue.
sure. And we actually have a question about what's the advantage of making an app instead of doing wrapping a web app to come in and control the device and all that. And it really depends on what you want to do with the app. If you need a lot, I mean, for this recipe app, it really doesn't have to be an app. I could probably make that a web page and just wrap it up and put it on the device.
Mm-hmm.
But for other apps, you might need the processing power, or you might need some additional um, access to the file system that you're not going to get in the web sandbox that it lives in. And that's what the app is for. Or you may want to run disconnected from the internet. There's a lot of people, handheld inventory devices that go in and out of warehouses that may not have internet access all the time. So they have to have it on their app, on their actual hands to be able to do what they need. And it's just, again, it just depends on the needs of the app.
Yeah, I will say, like, the web has come a long way. You can do a lot of things with web functionality and HTML, uh, like APIs. You can do things like geocoding, Bluetooth, all this kind of crazy stuff, right? Like, I remember 20 years ago, the web couldn't do any of this, and it can do it today. But there's still native APIs to iOS and Android that you potentially might not have access to if you're using purely a web view. So there's rumors right now that Apple might release an augmented reality headset. So I'm not saying Maui will, potentially support it, but I'm assuming those kind of APIs are going to be very specific to those devices, and the web may or may not have caught up to take advantage of those things. So if you want the latest access to the APIs, you're going to want to build native applications versus taking advantage of, say, a web view in an application. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people actually using the community toolkit, so that's very cool. I did mention MVU. If folks don't know what MVU is, it's like model view update. So it's kind of a unidirectional one-way data binding approach where you define your UI and you also define your state. And then as the state changes, the framework will update the view as state changes as well. So it's an interesting approach. I know Flutter takes advantage of that. If you're not a big XAML person, you can definitely, you know, look at that approach. I think it's very interesting from that perspective. So yeah, uh, yeah, Chad, let's get back to the app and let's talk about some more things.
Sure,
So,
absolutely.
a good question. What's the difference between Syncfusion's list view and Maui's control list view or collection view? So, Chad, that's a question for you.
Um, so our list view has a little more functionality. You can put has a little more variety of things you can do than with the collection view. You have the ability to put list views. You can change orientation to go left and right within the control without having to add additional things into it. Um, and that's really what I know about. I know I can go find a comparison document, but I don't have one handy.
Yeah. I will also say this for folks considering like Maui controls versus something like Syncfusion controls. I've noticed that Syncfusion has a release cycle that is definitely uh, more like faster than say the .NET releases. So if you're dependent on these controls, um, and there's potentially a bug in it somewhere, you may or may not have to wait and essentially like a full release cycle to get some of those fixes. One of I did run into a bug with the shell search uh, issue where it only works in Android and doesn't work in iOS, and that's still an outstanding issue in the Maui repository. Whereas Syncfusion, the roadmap seems to be at least quarterly. Chad, is that correct?
Oh
Um,
yeah, we have. Well, here let's look at the Maui roadmap actually for Syncfusion. So we started Maui controls. We really couldn't start them until until Maui had a lot of the UI frameworks complete. So we started sometime last spring, I think it was, and we've had a fairly aggressive push since then. I think the team right now has 48 developers on it, all building these Maui controls. This is where we stand today, and in the future for 23, we're adding these guys. Um, we have a release. Syncfusion has a release every quarter. There's a new build of Syncfusion controls. So there's volume 1, 2, 3, and 4 throughout the year. And within that release, within those quarterly releases, we have a weekly build and then occasionally a service pack release somewhere in the middle of that 3-month timeline. So we are very, very active, very focused on getting new controls out there, staying current with the environment. So we will always be within a couple weeks of current to whatever iOS or Android or even Windows or Mac OS has out there. We will, within a few weeks, we will be supporting that new environment, those changes.
yeah, that's really cool. And honestly, from a developer's perspective, I appreciate a company trying to keep up with my needs as a developer because you know you're putting your reputation on the line by picking any particular technology, and the worst thing you could tell somebody is like, hey, there's a bug here, but we have to wait 3 months until we can fix this thing. That doesn't look good. Doesn't look good as somebody trying to deliver a product or a service. So I appreciate Syncfusion taking the time to kind of put a good roadmap together and a release cycle for putting these things out. So
And something that anybody that's using Xamarin right now and they want to move to Maui, there's a big discussion about how do you migrate. And I think Microsoft is coming up with a plan. I haven't seen it yet. This is our plan. If you're using any of our Xamarin controls, then this is how you would migrate from that control to this new control. Here's the
mhm.
namespaces, the properties. You can scroll through this. Uh, you can see where this API is now this API, and you can make those changes and keep going with your application.
Yeah. I know there's a Xamarin upgrade assistant that Microsoft has put out. So it basically looks through your existing Xamarin Forms application and just kind of suggests what the namespace changes are going to be, very similar to what Chad is showing right now on the screen. But I think it's a command line utility. It may be built into Visual Studio. I'm not 100% sure. But there is like a upgrade assistant there as well. Josh is asking, a lot of Xamarin developers did not inject view models into the dependency container. Maui has decided to inject view models. Any insight on this change? Well, it's not like you have to use the dependency injection container. I think it's there if you want to use it, but if you just want to new up, say, your dependencies and assign your binding context within the constructor of your view, that's perfectly fine. I mean, those are stylistic choices. I don't think there's a wrong or right way to do it. Personally, I like dependency injection because, I don't have to worry about how things get constructed. I just know I need this thing. So this abstraction is pretty nice for me. Ivan kind of echoes kind of what we've been saying about these controls. He's been having issues with the list view and collection views coming from Maui. So he's really looking forward to trying out Syncfusion's approach to these things to see if he can kind of get around the issues that he's having with those controls. So again, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's actually why Syncfusion exists. The default controls are great, but you're going to want something a little bit different. Maybe you want to change them a little different way, and they are just really, really hard or impossible to make that happen. And that's where our controls come in, because people have come to us, we've said, yeah, we can do that, and then here's a control. And then everybody else kind of grows that control into whatever way the community pushes it. And so give Syncfusion controls a test rather, and see what you think.
Yeah, I'd be also curious to ask the people in the chat, like how big are your mobile development teams? Is it like a 1-person team, 5-person team, 100-person team? Because I think, again, controls make a lot of sense when you need to focus on the business task rather than the minutia and the intricacies of building these controls, right? We're all human. We only have a limited amount of time and brain power to solve anything. So, yeah. But yeah, let's get back to the code.
Yeah. And I do want to suggest that everybody go out and give JetBrains Writer a go. It's just different enough that you're going to have to poke around at it a little bit. But once you get into it, and once you start building something with it, or actually take a VS app you have now and open it in Writer and start playing with it and see how the difference is. It's just a lot more helpful. It's a lot more friendly even than Visual Studio is.
Cool. Oh, thanks for saying that. I'll answer this question. But go ahead, Chad. What are some other thoughts as you were kind of going through this, like app building experience? I know you wanted to use SQLite to store this data. What was that experience like?
So the SQLite was amazingly easy. It was, yes, it was amazingly easy. Easy enough that I forget how I actually did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you come out here and you click save, and that's all there is to it. You have this right here, the SQLite connection connects to the database. And actually, I think in here is where it is. Yeah, this right here is where we define it. This path is just a constant. And this connection does all of your updates, your reading, your writing, your all that. You don't have to do anything else. It was very, very, it was not difficult at all. I was very happy with it. I got past that hurdle pretty quickly and then forgot it was a hurdle.
Yeah, I really like this package for SQLite access inside of mobile apps. Here's kind of a perfect example. We were talking about dependency injection earlier. rather than having to new up the SQLite async connection every time. By registering it in the dependency injection, infrastructure of Maui, we can just ask for a SQLite async connection at any point in time, and we'll get the right one. So, in that instance, we just say, hey, give me this thing. And if we set up the thing correctly in Maui program, we just get it and it just works. So I think that's pretty cool. Ryan's asking, is this code open source available for view on GitHub? It's on Chad's computer right now, but I think he'd be more than happy to potentially push this up without his Syncfusion license in there.
Well, actually, my Syncfusion license is a evaluation key. So I think it expires in 2 weeks. So you guys are welcome to use it for 2 weeks. And then you'll have to come get your own. I did do that. And I will post this to GitHub later today. And when Carter posts this video out publicly, there will be a link to the GitHub. So you can come and download this sample and have your own play.
Cool. Very cool. I'm answering a question right now.
You always have an IDE in preview, don't you? Or at least as long as I've been playing with this, you have.
Yeah. Someone asked, are there free JetBrains writer licenses? There isn't a community version, but the thing I always tell folks is we do have early access program. We do have an early access preview program. So as long as you create a JetBrains account, you can try the latest and greatest versions of all of our tools. You might run into bugs, you might not. But that's kind of where we test out all the newest features and improvements to our tools. And we feel like for folks who are trying those out and kind of potentially suffering through some of the minor bugs that we might release in those preview things, it's a good kind of transaction. You use our tools, give us feedback, and we make the product better. And those don't require full-blown license. But those previews do end up running out, so keep that in mind. But yeah, we're actually in an early access preview right now, and if you go download it, you can also try out some of the newer things like our new UI. We've made improvements in performance and a lot of cool stuff there. So yeah, go try that out.
Cool. So they can have JetBrains for free if they agree to be a guinea pig.
Basically, yes.
Yeah,
but for a limited time. That said, we do appreciate our users. We do have a lot of loyal paying customers, and I'm sure those people will pay willingly because they just love our tools. So I'm not being a pushy salesman here. I'm just saying I love our tools. So
So Ivan is talking about Rider being a little bit slower building. That's and you've been telling me that on my little computer here it goes fast. So let's put this into the Maui emulator and let's run this, and somebody start a timer. Let's see how long it takes to get up and built. Do I have an emulator? I think I have an emulator running. Yeah, I got an emulator here. So let's see how long it takes to refresh this view.
So here's the interesting thing. We'll talk about the build process of Maui because folks will probably realize what's happening here. Maui now has AOT, which basically optimizes for native, like it's natively compiled for the platform. That does take a little bit longer to compile. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer to deploy. That's kind of why I'd love to see us focus on hot reload, but again, there's no promises there just yet as to when that will be delivered. But it definitely would make the experience a little better of like editing XAML. But yeah, it does sometimes take a little bit of time. That's the build at the .NET level. So it's a combination of both the build targets, the SDK tooling and stuff like that. I've seen it maybe a minute to 2 minutes sometimes to kind of push things at the longest. If you have changed basically no XAML, and you just want to restart in debug mode, those typically go pretty fast because, yeah, nothing has changed and nothing has to get pushed out. So, yeah, hopefully that answers people's question.
And then there's another question about deploying directly to a device. And yes, you can actually deploy it. I have my little Android phone set up here. It's this Kyocera. And if I can get this Kyocera to share a screen, I can actually run it with you. But Carter, if you give me access.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Let me find you on the attendee list, and I can do just that.
I keep getting kicked off the attendee list. Yes,
Well,
it's a lovely
let's
thing,
fix
but
that.
yes, hold on a second. So let me go through this and get it set up again. But now in here, I'll go ahead and start this build. There we go. So now it's building to my device.
I will say this too, since Rider's built on the IntelliJ platform, we take advantage of a lot of what happens for Android development in like the other ecosystems. So we bring in tools like, and you can see it in Chad's toolbars here, the device manager. So you can manage all your Android emulator instances, which are super cool. You can use the device file explorer to see what the files are on any particular device you're connected to. And there's things like Logcat Viewer, so you can see the logs that are being output on Android. Resource Manager. There's just a slew of Android tooling inside of Rider that actually makes developing specifically for Android a lot nicer. When it comes to iOS, Apple kind of owns that ecosystem, so they're going to provide you with a lot of the tooling. Currently, there's no integration directly in Rider to do things like previews and stuff like that. But the Android experience is pretty nice in Rider, and will help you do things like download SDKs and manage all that kind of stuff. So Dell asks, can you start a MAUI solution in Visual Studio 2022 and also open it in Rider? Yes, you can. Yeah.
Yes, and actually, when we first started playing with this, I couldn't get Rider to work on my machine, so I built everything in Visual Studio. I got it started in Visual Studio, and then I opened it in Rider and kept playing with it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean the solution structure, file structure, directory structure, from what I can tell, it's exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We basically use everything that Microsoft has decided in the .NET platform. We don't add anything or change any kind of the build targets to, bend any of your projects to. Oh, look at that! We're on a phone. We don't bend your solutions or projects or require you to generate any extra files to make the solutions work inside a Rider. So. Ooh, I'm on your phone.
Yes, you're on my phone. Oh, there we go. And so there it is. It's on my phone now. And again, I am a spectacular designer. You can see how things don't quite fit on this device. If I was putting this in the market, I'd spend some time working on this part.
Yeah, somebody mentioned they have a designer on their team, so kudos to that person for
yes,
having designers and valuing them.
Keep them happy. Keep them happy. Designers are important people. But since I have this up, let me show you. That's not what I wanted to do. Let me show you this. I'm going to take a still life of my goat over here.
Chad, I didn't know you have goats in your office. I find that troubling. Oh, there it is.
He's actually noisy. Yeah, okay.
That's pretty cool. I gotta say, I haven't seen the picture stuff in Maui yet, and just seeing it kind of work is pretty awesome. So.
So let's see. There we go. And there's our goat. For some reason, it is rotated, and that's something else that will have to be. I'll have to figure out how to tell that it's rotated. But there it is. There's our goat. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's the app. There's the app on a local device. And according to, let me stop sharing my screen here.
Yeah, it was neat to see you
so
kind of deploy from Rider into your actual phone. So yeah,
what
that all works.
I didn't realize is I could actually probably pair this with Wi-Fi instead of a cable. That's something I might test later on, see how that works.
You wacky kids with your Wi-Fi. Back in my day, we just plugged cables everywhere.
Back in my day, we had a USB drive, or actually we had a 3.5-inch floppy that we carried around. Yes, Wi-Fi is a big improvement.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just to kind of summarize what we've done here, we've created a new MAUI app on macOS, right? We ended up using the templates that get installed. So for folks who aren't familiar with MAUI, the installation process, you start with installing the SDK, and then you have to go through and install the workloads specific to each platform that you want to target. So iOS, Mac Catalyst, Android, those are all the workloads that kind of get installed. And then a pro tip for everyone, make sure you have a global JSON. All the workloads get installed specific to an SDK band. So if you're on .NET 7, you want to make sure your global JSON targets .NET 7. Chad, could you go to the Solution Explorer and show folks what a global JSON is? So at the top there, which says solution. Well, I guess you can manage it that way, but I wanted to show folks the file itself. So make sure you have a global JSON. If for some reason you've installed later versions of .NET or you don't have that particular SDK and your solution showing a lot of errors and mistakes, you're probably not targeting the correct SDK band. So global JSON is your friend when you're doing MAUI development. So you'll install the workloads, you'll set this up, and you'll get kind of ready to start doing your MAUI development. From there, we added Syncfusion controls. We added MVVM toolkit. We added SQLite. And really, Chad wrote this whole application maybe in a couple days, right, Chad? Worth of time?
Yeah, it was worth of time, maybe 8-12 hours, maybe. And that's because I didn't know what I was doing. I think if I had to write it again now, so something similar, maybe a day, maybe less than a day. 3 or 4 apps from now, I could probably, something like this, probably could have done in an afternoon. I mean, there's not, if you look at it, there's just not that much code. And once you figure out how to do it, it really wasn't that difficult. Just getting the mindset right and thinking in MVVM and MAUI and XAML, thinking about XAML. XAML, this darn, just doing as pretty as I made this, right? And nobody's gonna call it pretty, but as pretty as I made this, that was 45 minutes just doing this kind of thing here. So a designer could do this in 10 minutes probably.
Yeah, and I think if your designers are working in Figma and SVG-based kind of design tools, you can very easily design a really cool application and kind of bring that into MAUI as well. So, yeah, never let a developer design things. We're always a little behind the curve, but
we think we're really
no offense
cool
to our audience.
We think we're really cool, but we're not.
Hey, speak for yourself, Chad. Yeah, I mean, do folks have any other questions? Do you have any thoughts? Are folks really excited to get into MAUI, kind of move from Xamarin, go from WPF to potentially MAUI for Windows applications? I'd love to hear from our audience if they have any other questions or thoughts. Yeah, and we'll wait.
So there is a question about Blend for VS22. And Blend, if I'm correct, Blend was a WPF thing, right? It lets you it was really cool for styling WPF apps. That's what it was, right? There's not any new version of it, is there?
I don't think there's a newer version. Definitely Blend. I haven't been on Windows in a while, but I remember Blend coming out and being in the era where designers would design a lot of your XAML in Blend and then hand you
Hmm.
your views and your UIs, and then developers kind of wire up this kind of shell of a UI. Um, I haven't used Blend in a while. I imagine a lot of WPF people do, but yeah, I don't think it's supported outside of Windows at this point.
And I do know that the XAML for Maui and Xamarin are different from
Mhm.
WPF, and I don't know if there's enough commonalities that Blend could even work on it. It might, but I just haven't looked into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of flavors of XAML out there. I know there's other platforms as well where we've seen Uno platform, Avalonia is out there as well, and they all kind of have their own little flavors of XAML. So keep that in mind.
So I think it'd be worthwhile for so Bassam, go ahead and give that a test and see if you can get Blend. Open up VS22 with the Maui app and see if Blend can do anything for it. That'd be an interesting thing to see.
Yep. So yeah, I'd really love people to try out Maui Development Writer. Our team is always looking for feedback. If you find issues or you think something could be a little better, we invest in developer tooling just like Syncfusion invests in these components to empower developers. And getting your feedback, having those discussions with you, and trying to understand what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish can help us build better products. So please try it out. Go to our issue tracker, start a conversation about anything you'd like to see in regards to Maui development. We're ready to hear those kind of comments. So,
Khalid, if you send me a link, I'll pull it up on my screen here. But Syncfusion, we do the same thing. We put out controls and then we grow those controls based upon user feedback. And here's the page where you can come and provide feedback on whatever particular platform you're looking at, whatever set of controls. You can provide feedback here.
mhm.
And this you can vote on. I'm not allowed to vote on these things because I would skew the results.
you
But
get you get 10 votes per normal vote, right?
that I wish I did. Um, but this is the idea here. You can come and look at this. It's all public. You can come have a play, see what's here. If you need a control to do something different, make the request.
Mhm. Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, I think if we're not getting any more questions, folks, feel free to reach out to us. I guess on social media, or anywhere you can find your Syncfusion or JetBrains developer advocates. Uh, yeah, reach out to us. We love talking to the community. That's why we do these things. I will end on this note, and then I'll give the floor to Chad. But I do think Maui is very promising. I think it's a nice evolution of where Xamarin used to be, and Maui has the potential to be a really cool platform for people looking to do mobile development. So, like all things in life, everything is a work in progress. It will get better as more people use it, invest their time, and really kind of help grow this platform. So it's really up to the community of developers, and I think I'd like to see this succeed. So, folks, give it a try, see where it goes. I'm excited for the future of Maui. So,
Awesome. Yes. And just to echo what Khalid said, I think Maui is going to be around for a while. It's again, we think enough of it that we've already committed. I think again, our Maui team is 45 developers last time I checked. And we're putting out, we're rebuilding our Xamarin suite into Maui. So we're committing to it pretty good. We get a lot of people talking about, asking about our Maui controls. And that's how we garner popularity, is how many people are talking to us about our stuff on Maui or on whatever. So we think it has a future. Dell, thank you so much for this link. I think I'm already dangerous as a developer doing designs, but I appreciate that. Yes, I will remember you. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
The next session is Chad just designing the heck out of mobile apps, I think. No, I'm just joking.
Let me take a couple of classes, and I think I could take a world of classes, and I would still not be any good.
So yeah, thank you folks for joining us today. Again, reach out to us. We love chatting with folks, and thank you so much for spending this hour with us. It's been really fun. And Chad and Syncfusion folks, thank you for having me again. I really enjoy our time together. So thank you.
Khalid, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate you coming. It's always a lot of fun, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
All right.